The Love Leadership Academy with Cindy Willcocks is a brand new podcast about dreaming big and living your best life. There is only now, this very moment in time. So let go of the past, avoid worrying about the future, and focus on being your authentic self.
So my name's Cindy Willcocks, and I'm the director of R10, Enriching the Next Generation, which is a community interest company, not for profit. And I'm also the director of R10 Nurse Limited. And I've created a model called L.O.V.E Leadership. And Angelos is here with me today and agreed to be interviewed. I've got some questions as part of the L.O.V.E Leadership Academy and the L.O.V.E Leadership model. And I'm going to get Angelos to introduce himself.
Hello, Cindy. Thanks for having me on. So for those of you who don't know who I am a full-time property investor, and also I've written a number one best-selling book on how to be successful called Your Success, and I'm currently writing my second book, Property Nightmares. I also run a popular podcast called Your Success, where we interview, including yourself, Cindy.
Yeah, indeed.
Many different people across the world about what success and how to be successful from all walks of life, business, films, all sorts. So yeah, I'm really, really pleased that you've asked me on today to talk about love leadership and a little bit about myself.
Amazing, thank you for that. So I just want to introduce the L.O.V.E Leadership model for people that haven't heard of it before and just might be wondering what on earth we're talking about. So although it is based on principles of love and integrity, openness and honesty, what I founded both my businesses on is also an acronym which stands for Listen, Own, Voice and Empower. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail. But those are the kind of principles I believe to living a healthy, happy life. So it's something that I've written about in a book called Draw a Heart Around It, Revolutionary Mental Health Treatment for Individuals and Companies. And it's something that I'm promoting in the world. And we're seeing a lot of love right now with everything that's going on. So I'm very happy about this fact. So the first thing that I was asking you to kind of think about is the first part of the model, which is listen. So can you remember a time when you were listened to? So basically, can you think back in time and think, actually, yeah, I was listened to, and what impact did that have on you?
Okay, so pretty much 2 years ago to the day is an example that comes to mind. I was on a 3-day weekend, shall we say, writing my book with my co-author, a guy called Mo Hakia, really cool guy. And we went away because we needed to be away from distractions, our families, etc., etc. So we could just focus purely on writing content. So we booked this lovely romantic weekend away in this hotel. And it was great. It was absolutely great. And to answer your question, you would assume that writing a book between two people, there's going to be an element of conflict, different ideas, different ways that you could take the book, different writing styles, and then merging them. What I found was the exact opposite. So writing with Mo was a real pleasure, to be honest with you, because we both listened to each other. So he would come up with some really cool ideas. And we would use most of them, and then likewise myself, I would come up with a few good ideas, and then we would just analyze it between each other and just work out what's best for the book. So both of us, we would set aside our egos, I guess, and just focus on the primary objective, which is getting the best possible book written. And I felt the way that we worked together, the way that we listened to each other was really, really useful, because we ended up changing people's lives. The book eventually made its way, so it became a number one bestseller on Amazon. But more importantly than that was a few of the copies managed to make it to, I think in Nepal, where these ladies who were, well, I guess there's no other way of saying it, they were in the sex trade, and they escaped because it was against their will, and they formed this commune, and the book managed to make its way out there, and they were reading it, and we got some feedback and some photos of them reading it, and it made a difference. And I felt, that's probably the best part of the whole book, making a difference in people's lives. It's helped people as well, just on the precipice of whether they want to create a business or not. We talk about the pros and cons of doing that and whether that's something that you really want to do. So stepping back to answer your question again, yeah, that was, I guess, a time where the creative juices were really flowing and being listened to, and listening, it's a two-way street, was really important, and it produces great books. So I'm really pleased with that.
Amazing. Sounds really great, and to have that impact and make a difference in the lives of other people is just very rewarding, isn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah, it's really great. So how does that experience of feeling listened to compare to not feeling listened to, and how do you get yourself heard now?
Okay, so I gave this a bit of thought, because normally, I tend to make it so that my point is always adhered to, if that makes sense, without sounding like a dictator or something like that. But normally when I'm working with property or other businesses, I expect things to be followed and done to the best of people's ability. But I guess the last time that a person didn't listen to me ended up costing me quite a lot of money. So this was back in 2013. I was doing a refurb on a property, and there was a massive garage, a humongous garage on the side of this beautiful old Victorian house. And it was just crying out to be made into this beautiful living area. It just absolutely perfect. It was always being hit by the sun. It needed a lot of love. And because it was very, very sunny in the summer of 2013, as I'm sure you remember, Cindy, it was very dry inside. And I said to the builder at the time, because I'd only been doing refurbs for a few years up to that point, and I said to him, I think we should tank this this garage, make it waterproof, effectively build this internal skin so that no water could possibly penetrate. And he said, look, Angelos, it's going to cost a lot of money. Do you really want to be doing this at this point? And I guess looking back he didn't have the experience to do it anyway, so that's why he was kind of pushing on the money aspect of things. And I listened to him. I respected his opinion at the time, and we got the job done. We insulated it all. It was a beautiful, beautiful conversion, and it was a lovely room. I rented it, and then I think it was the winter of 2014. I guess you probably don't remember. We had a lot of rain. In this part of the world, and I had a phone call from the tenant, and he said to me, quite understatedly, that it was a little bit damp in the garage. I thought, it's the usual damp versus condensation issue. So I said, okay, well, let me come down there and let me have a look at it. So I walked in, and the water was up to my ankle. It was that bad. And what had happened was because one of the walls is an external wall which backs onto the neighbour's garden, all of their water runs off back in through down into that garage stroke room conversion. And it really well and truly flooded. And I was like, God damn it, man. If only I'd listened to my instinct. And so we had to, in the 2-week period that he had off over Christmas, because he was a student at the time, we had to rip out that whole place, undo all of the good work that I put in, and just tank the hell out of it. So a lesson for me, really: trust your instincts. Don't necessarily believe the experts, because sometimes they do get it wrong, and sometimes they don't necessarily have your best interest at heart. So it was a costly mistake. I think it ended up costing me about £4,000 or £5,000 to rectify the mistake. But at least now, it's done properly, and that's been a real good learning curve for me with all future conversions. I always overspec it, so if there's even a hint of water or anything like that, we just hack it back. We address it from the outside first to stop it, and then we make sure that we create this nice shell which is warm and watertight for any future tenants. So yeah, that was the last time, I guess.
That's a big yeah. Did notice you said with a smile on your face, it's all sorted now though. So
yeah, it's sorted. Yeah, no water's going to be coming in for decades. Don't worry about that one. Yeah.
How do you get yourself heard like now as you? So, someone may be listening thinking that it's actually, when someone's saying something opposite to you, how do you get yourself heard?
I guess you've got to trust yourself and have confidence in yourself, but also have an ear open to listen to the other side, because As much as I have the experience in the world of property, I'm always learning. Every project's different, or every business setup is different, for example, and you don't know everything. So it's important to have your confidence, but also to listen to other people, because maybe they have a different way of doing it, which is better than you, or maybe you've not come across this situation and you need to draw in experts. So it's important for it to be a two-way street, to have your confidence and say, well, no, I think this is it. So if you imagine a funnel, at the top of the funnel, all of the opinions, all the facts, figures, etc., come in, and then you've got to sort it and come up with a decision. And that's the way I see it at the moment. So if, for example, someone doesn't necessarily agree with how I've proposed we should move forward, I talk with that person with respect. So there is an element of understanding there, but also mixing a bit of humor now and again to try and deflect any negative feelings. So, for example, I try and push people to achieve their true potential. I can see what others can do, even though they may not be able to see it themselves. I often do it with my workers, just to try and push them on and learn new skills, because they can do it. I can see it within them. Even though they may not necessarily want to, at the end of it, they're like, actually, I'm glad you made me do that, because now I realize I can achieve that. But sometimes if they get it wrong, you do have to clamp down hard on them, but also let them know that there's no ill feeling at the end of it. The whole point is it's not a personal issue. It's just making sure we achieve the best outcome for what we're trying to do, whether that's property, whether that's the podcast, whether that's my network meetings, whatever it is. That's the ultimate goal. There's nothing else, as far as I'm concerned, apart from achieving the objective, but making sure that you're coming along with me for the journey, shall we say.
Amazing, thank you. That's a great share. So with that in mind, thinking about yourself, what's the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome? And I guess there's a little bit more to that. What's the biggest challenge you've had to overcome? And then how do you do it? How did you do it? What action did you take?
So I work a lot with investors. They invest with me. Their hard-earned money. I give them a very good rate of return, 10% sometimes. And so I have a great responsibility to make sure that I fulfill my requirements. So what I mean by that is that they help me build a portfolio. So they get a good return and I go out and buy, refurb, and tenant out their properties. But to do that, you have to have so many different skills, and there's so many different things that can go wrong, and it's all on you. There's no, I'll blame it on Terry, or I'll blame it on Samantha, or whatever it is. It's all on you, you know. Now I'm slowly scaling up my team, but ultimately the buck stops with me. So you have to be able to deal with solicitors, with sellers, with brokers, investor partners, planning, building control, the estate agents, the letting agents. All of these are human beings that you have to deal with, who have different interests, different ways of communication. And you have to be able to overcome all of their objections, all of the issues, etc., etc. So you have to wear many, many different hats when dealing with business. And then you've got the physical aspect of property, for example. If it's falling down, or there's a blocked toilet, or whatever it may be, you have to be able to jump from the top level stuff, the top level strategy, your vision, your why you're doing all of this, right down to dealing with the tenant issues and whatever else. So you have to be able to jump up and down. And sometimes it gets very, very difficult. And sometimes there are days where you question everything, or why am I doing this? And this is really important to do that, because at the end of the day, you know what your vision is, you know what your why is, and that drives you forward those hard days. So to own my stuff, I'll give you an example. I think I'm going to touch on it a little later, but I've recently had a project where it was a four-story building, a lovely house, built in 1840, and it was on the verge of collapse. It was resting on a single brick, if you know what I mean, a single skin of bricks, which is never a good thing. And so that was quite a stressful period. So, but then you kick into problem solving mode. Right, okay, you can either freeze and be paralyzed and put your head in the sand and go, oh my God, why is this happening to me? Or you can crack on with it, pull in all the necessary tradespeople, professional people to look at it, analyze a problem, and then execute a solution. But making sure that you keep all key partners up to date and communication. So all of that happened, about 6 months ago for me. So it's really important to own your stuff, because if you don't, no one else is going to, and then you're just going to end up with a very messy situation. So it's very important to be a leader in that respect, and to coordinate between all of the different people that you need to.
And I guess like by owning your stuff and overcoming challenges, it benefits you kind of longer term in terms of thinking about anything you're involved in, really.
Yeah, I mean, this didn't happen overnight. I guess I've always been very confident since a young age, and I've always taken personal responsibility for the good and the bad that I do throughout my life. You know, no one's perfect. We all have made and will continue to make mistakes. And as a human being, you just got to think, right, okay, I've learned from this now. How can I better myself? How can I improve my situation, whether it's with your family, with your business, whatever it is, with society? It's really important to own your own actions. You know, I see a lot in society these days. There's always someone else's fault. There's always a blame. There's kicking it downstream all the time, sue them or whatever it may be. How about you take responsibility for yourself? And I find that if people did that a lot more, we probably lead a lot happier lives. And we, rather than having a victim mentality, we'd probably be a lot more assertive, a lot more, have a lot more leadership and control over our own destiny.
Yeah. It's really hard sometimes to convince people that, you know, people don't fall into categories of kind of lucky or unlucky, and that actually you can create a future that you want. Within the model of love leadership, it's based on principles of love, it's based on good intentions, and also there has to be an element of challenge and support, because sometimes people can kind of get a little bit stuck. And I find like the ownership part of the love leadership model probably most of the challenge, because I think people will find themselves in kind of patterns that get them stuck and then they feel helpless and hopeless and negative. And I think being able to have a conversation that gently challenges things or points things out maybe that you're not seeing can be really beneficial for people. So I totally agree with you there and what you're saying about actually taking responsibility for ourselves is really, really important. And if you can't do that, or if you find that you're, you know, blaming other people or, you know, blaming the world around you, then maybe just get some help just to give you a different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, find your why. I mean, there's no shame in feeling lost in the world, or there's no shame in feeling that you don't know which direction to take yourself, your career, wherever it may be. Just sometimes you need to take a step back, speak with friends and family or professional people, and just ask them, I need you to hear me out, vent all your frustration, and then perhaps at the end of that exercise, look at creating your why and your vision for your life. You know, what is it that you really want to get out of, you know, your short time on this planet? Because no one knows how long we're going to be here for, so you might as well make the most of it. And don't get me wrong, there are days where you question everything, and there are days where you just feel really down. But that's normal. That's normal to be like that. As long as it's only a short element of your working year, shall we say, you just got to pick yourself up and just carry on. But you've got to carry on in the right direction for you. And this is why having a strong vision, a strong why for the purpose in your life or your career or your family is really important. This is why I've got it written down. I'm looking at it right now on my whiteboard, so I can't escape. It's written down.
Yeah.
And I know we've all come across the concept of vision board, where you visually put something on a physical piece of paper or a whiteboard, so you look at it constantly. But by doing that, you help cement it in your mind and realize actually it doesn't have to be just a wishy-washy dream. It can be a reality for yourself. So it's very important to write down your goals and where you want to be, but also seek that help from friends or professional, whoever it may be, to actually create that vision for yourself before you start going half-cocked on the wrong tangent, shall we say.
Yeah, totally. When I do teachings, I talk about like the heartbeat of life, and I always point out to people, you know, think on programs that you have, hospital programs, medical programs, where you see the heartbeat on the screen. It kind of goes along and it goes up and it goes down and it goes up and it goes along. I always say to people, what happens if you have a straight line? Like, well, you're dead. Like, exactly. Like, the heartbeat of life is like the ups and downs of life. It's life is that. We don't live in a perfect world, and perfection is something that people strive for, I think, sometimes. And then I think what's really helpful is having the conversations where people that may be deemed as successful people also say, actually, I have bad days. Actually, things go up and down for me, and I have to keep myself in check, or I have to.
But that's absolutely normal, though. I mean, if you're trying to achieve something unique, different, and difficult, you will, of course, come across obstacles. You know, this is just the way life is. But that's what makes the success all the more rewarding and tastes so much sweeter, because you've had to overcome all these obstacles. No one's ever going to give you an easy life. And why should you have an easy life? Because then you don't appreciate it, do you?
True.
And that's one thing I find, is that life is not fair. Life and the universe do not owe you anything. And this is why it's really important to own your own destiny and create your own destiny, because otherwise you'll just drift along serving other people, whatever else, and not fulfilling your full potential. And you talked about luck earlier, and luck, I believe in luck, and not as some kind of mysticism or, airy fairy concept. The best definition of luck I've ever read is when opportunity meets preparation. And I find if you're prepared and ready along your journey, and when that opportunity comes, you're ready for it and you can move quickly, you are effectively creating your own luck.
I agree with that. I think from another conversation that I may have with people is that it's all right for them. They're really lucky. I'm just so unlucky. I can never do anything. It's never going to happen to me. And I think there's a lot of conversations that I have with people to try and positively reframe that, to say, well, actually, you can. And I think you've just summed it up nicely, because it is about being prepared and then connecting that with opportunity. So it's grasping that and seeing yourself in that, seeing yourself living that life or being that person, I think, sometimes, rather than taking a back seat and thinking it's never going to happen to me. Yeah, it's good. Okay, so thinking about the model of love leadership, we've got listen, we've got own. The next bit's voice. I'll talk about having a voice and not being afraid to use it. So is there ever a time, or can you recall a time where you were afraid or felt challenged to use your voice or to speak up?
So I've given that a lot of thought, actually, Cindy, and I can't recall a time where I haven't spoken up if I've seen something wrong or I felt strongly enough to say something. But I guess the last time where I spoke up against authority, and it was kind of positively but quite negatively at the same time received, because unfortunately egos were damaged, was in a previous employment. I had been working there for a few years, and this was many years ago. And I saw certain things that I felt that the business could do better. Now, I wasn't necessarily, top level management or whatever else. I was just doing the IT side of things. And I didn't necessarily agree with some of the things that were happening, and I could see ways of improving the business. So even then, I guess you would call it like an intrapreneur, someone who's trying to, help within the business create better results for the business. So I called a meeting between the MD and other key personnel, and I had like a 3-4 page document of all the ideas and ways, and I guess some criticisms of how things could be improved. It was always with a positive spin as opposed to a negative. No one wants to hear that your business is crap and running rubbishly. But it wasn't like that. It was tweaks, if you know what I mean. It's tweaks to help improve things, measure things better, etc., etc. So we're there for a morning, just giving the ideas out. And at the end of it, you're just faced with stunned silences. And I think there was the people in the room, they were like, well, who is this guy? He's like 23, 24, whatever he is, jumped up little guy, and he's trying to tell us how to do our business and whatever else. But the intention was purely to help improve the business. It wasn't to try and undermine these people. So they thanked me politely and sent me on my way, and that was the end of that. But then a few months later, some of the ideas that I'd suggested started trickling through the business. So I thought, okay, well, fine. see the bigger picture, right? I don't need to claim credit for that. I'm not that way inclined. But it's sometimes good to just speak your mind if you do see something wrong, or you can see ways to improve things, whether it's in business or your personal life, whatever it may be. Just get it out there, man. Don't be afraid to speak up. What's the worst that could happen, you know?
Yeah, that's great. So do you think that's something for you that you've just always been able to do?
Yeah, I guess it is. I mean, even in nursery, or even in nursery, I used to butt heads with the teachers and whatever else, and that went through to primary and secondary, and then into corporate life when I started at 16. So, yeah, it's always been something that I've never been afraid to speak my mind, but do it comically or sarcastically, whatever it may be for the situation. Yeah, and I think people should never be afraid to speak out, because if you've got a good idea, why keep it to yourself? You know, if you can improve things, or if you've got a great way of improving someone else's things. So, for example, if I saw, so I mentor a few people with property, and I can see some things they're doing in their personal life, which is not necessarily congruent to how they want to do things in their business life. So sometimes you need to talk about their personal side of things, because that consciously or subconsciously will be sabotaging their business success. So you have to sometimes push that boundary a little bit and just say, look, with respect, I think that you're doing this a little bit wrong, or do it, or perhaps you should look at it in a different way. You mentioned about reframing it. So it's really important to reframe things and just plant that seed in their mind and just think, well, maybe next time you do X, you should consider Y before you do Z. And I think that's really important to do so.
Yeah, great. So the final part of the Love leadership model is empower. And when I talk about empower, I'm talking about engagement, engaging with people, engaging with yourself, and education. So again, educating other people, but also educating ourselves. And Love leadership essentially is the framework that I use throughout my life, on my journey, and with supporting other people. And I wanted to make it easier for people to remember, hence the Love leadership. And empower can be something that is inspiring for people to feel. So I was just wondering, how would you describe empowerment, and how do you know when you're feeling empowered?
I guess for me, okay, the definition of empowerment is giving someone, either who works for you or is working alongside with you, enough authority and autonomy to execute decisions, so that it ultimately leads to the same goal that we're all working for. Now, some styles of leadership and managerial kind of styles are very dictatorial. So what I mean by that is, right, John, I want you to do X, Y, and Z. Don't deviate. You're just an automaton, and I don't want you to ever use your initiative. Whereas the people that I work with, I encourage them to use their initiative. I still check them,
Yeah.
but I expect the solution to be executed in whatever way they feel necessary, but within guidelines as well. So it's a two-way street again. And I think it's really important, talking of love leadership, to show compassion to people. So, for example, sometimes people will have issues at home, and not everyone is like us, where they can kind of park it, and you just, you're a professional, you just got to crack on and do your work. Sometimes that bleeds through into their work, and you need to pull them to one side and just listen and show some compassion and understanding, but also just say, look, you kind of have to leave a little bit at home. I'm here if you need me outside of work hours, but this is what I need you to do. So it's always having an eye to the main objective, but also being a human being at the same time. I think that's really important. But also making sure that you're surrounded by very clever people, cleverer than you. Ideally, you never want to be the smartest person in the room, because then you can really just allow and empower those guys to go out and crack on and achieve the objective. And they're going to come up with some awesome stuff. You're still ultimately in charge, and and liable for what the result is. But if you employ these people who have awesome talents, and you show compassion to them, but also strong leadership, I think you can get some really good results in no matter what field you're in.
Amazing. I agree with that totally. Empowerment is so important, and I think it does start with you feeling empowered yourself. And that
yeah, I mean, who prefer to be led by? Someone who's confident, someone who listens, someone who's compassionate, or someone who's just going to say, right, everyone, you follow what I do, and that's the end of it. You just do it my way. I mean, who wants to work for that? The second person. No. Chuck in a few great jokes and puns. I mean, you got the perfect leader, right?
It's great. So, have you ever doubted yourself at all, ever? Can you remember a time when you doubted yourself?
Most days is the honest answer.
Yeah.
I touched on it earlier a little bit, where sometimes when you're in the thick of it, when buildings are about to collapse or whatever it may be, when you're doing your refurbs, or when you're surrounded by water, then you question everything. But at the end of the day, like I said, you've got to have a strong why. You've got to have a strong reason and motivation to keep you going through the crap as well as the good stuff. And that you've got to jump out from dealing with all the little crap that goes on, all the dramas and whatever happens, and just jump back up to the top level during your time off, when you're reflecting at the end of the day, and say, right, okay, the reason I'm doing this is to create a financially stable future for myself and my family, and this is the reason why I go through all this crap. So during those days of doubt, when it does niggle through, then yes, this is why I remind myself, and this is why the vision board is always there. I see it like the northern star. It's always there, it's always constant, it's not moving, and that's what directs sailors, and this is what directs me to achieving all that I do achieve. So yeah, we're all human, we all have doubts. No one's perfect. Whether you doubt yourself, your leadership, your skills, and whatever else, always have a mind open to, yes, if you are doubting yourself, just analyze why that is. Is it because you need further training, or you need to become an expert in a certain topic, or do you just need some time out? Maybe you're burnt out, and this is why you're doubting yourself more and more. Just step away for a day or so, and then come back recharged. So there's many reasons why you could doubt yourself, but always remind yourself of why you're doing this, and that should keep you on the true course.
Hopefully, yeah. So, just thinking about you, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned, both personally and or in business?
Biggest lesson? That's a good one. I think it's constantly educate yourself and constantly try and be the best person you can. There's no reason why, when you employ people, whether it's builders or whether it's assistants or whoever it may be, to always treat them with respect and treat them like you would expect to be treated. To misquote the Bible there somewhere along the line. So work, by its very definition, isn't something that necessarily gets people excited, right? But if you can make an environment where people want to turn up and they have a good time, and everyone's proud of the goal that they achieve, and we all have a cracking time, and we all learn as well, and we push ourselves. We're constantly achieving new things and stepping outside of our comfort zones. Who wouldn't want to work in that kind of environment? So I think it's important for me to create that kind of environment for people, so that they achieve the best they can as well. Even though they're working for me, there's no reason why they can't learn new skills and have a good time along the way. I think David Brent from The Office kind of says that, was he? A philosopher, a manager, a leader, a comedian. David Brent.
Right.
So yeah, and always be up for a challenge. Always be up for it. Never ever say no. So when I was 16, I was offered a job. I was living in Plymouth at the time, in the National Bank of Greece, as their IT guy in the City of London. I was like, hell yeah, take me up there now. I'd love to do that. And I went off like a shot. And I've always been excited by these challenges, and I've never backed down from a challenge, because at the end of it, you're only going to learn and grow. And as human beings, you should never stay still. You should always be pushing the boundaries and always be learning and experiencing new things. So it's very important to do so. So those are probably the two things. So always accept a challenge and always keep learning.
I like that. It's good. Okay, so thanks for sharing those things with us. It's been great to get your views about kind of aspects of love leadership and your experiences, and you've been very open, so thank you for that. I just wondered whether you thought that the model of love leadership would be beneficial in business, and if so, how?
To a certain extent. I know that may be a little bit controversial, Cindy. I think that it's important in business that we understand it's all about the people. The most important person is not necessarily the customer, which may surprise people, it's your staff, as Richard Branson has said. So it's important to empower them, to educate them, to hold them accountable and to measure their success. And you do that by being a decent manager. One thing I've learned is that if your people are leaving, then have a look at the manager, because it's normally the manager who either isn't working well with them or doesn't have enough emotional intelligence to work with these kind of people, and people are people. They will leave if they don't like it. They're not going to be there forever. So making sure that you have compassion and listening to them, but also I would counter slightly the love leadership model in the fact that you also need to make sure that they have an eye on the objective at all times. And that ultimately is to serve the customers, to serve the vision of the business, and to make a profit. And I think it's very important. But the two are mutually exclusive. They can work quite well together. I find in businesses, if you have that compassion, that emotional intelligence, and you listen to your employees and you understand them and you analyze them and work out what works best for them, then you can get the best out of them.
Yeah, totally. And I respect what you say there. I mean, from the model of love leadership, we would talk about doing more of what you love and less of what you don't, on the basis that if you're happy in your work, it doesn't feel like work. I wake up every day, I'm glad to be alive, I'm glad to be doing what I'm doing. And, you know, there have been lots of challenges, particularly recently with COVID-19, particularly in healthcare, social care. I'm not saying exclusively. I am saying that it is very difficult to follow the government rules when you're delivering personal care to people. So you do put yourself into situations that are challenging. And even through all of that, I think because I love what I do, I just feel so much satisfaction in doing it. It never feels like hard work that I don't want to do. So I think, yeah, I can see where people may not be always able to do what they love, because there are some challenges that don't feel comfortable, don't feel like they're worth doing, yet they still have to be done. So I totally
It's an interesting one because, do what you love and the money will flow is the saying.
It's true.
Which works to a certain extent.
Yeah.
If you have the framework and the time to be able to do it, then yes, absolutely. I mean, I love writing books. I'm writing my second one at the moment, and I love it. And I'm sure I'll make some money out of it, and help improve people's lives, etc., etc. But if I didn't create that framework to allow me to do that over the past decade or so, and the sacrifices I've had to make to create my business, then I wouldn't be able to do it. So sometimes you have to take the rough with the smooth, right?
Totally.
And not everyone is going to be able to. Well, I love playing. For example, someone may say, "I love playing Xbox all day long." Well, okay, that's fine, but how are you going to make money out of that? Well, if you're very good, then you could potentially do the virtual online gaming tournaments, but that's a very small segment of people. So you have to find a passion that kind of works with the business side of things, and also allows you to be paid. Now, not everyone is cut out to be an entrepreneur, and not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but find something that's congruent with your passion. So, for example, if you've got a real passion for, say, Apple products, and obviously Apple is the right choice. If you find yourself in a caring kind of disposition, then you want to look at maybe nursing or whatever it may be and making a difference in people's lives. You don't necessarily have to be a business leader to make a difference in this world, but at least find something that you can at least relate to and be part of a team that you feel is aligned with your vision and your passions in life.
Yeah, definitely. And I just love the movement of business leaders in having, you know, kind of social conscience. Their purpose is socially kind of improving things for people too. So I've started to see like lots of businesses move much more towards what's good for the planet, what's good for people. We talk about love a lot more in society and caring for one another. And I've certainly seen with the COVID-19 saga.
So it normally takes big events to change how we do things, right?
Yeah.
So we've been bombarded with little Greta Thunberg for the past year or two, and she's working her ass off to try and spread the message across the world that climate change is happening, and we really need to get with the program. Well, what have we done? Bugger all, really. And and shame on us for doing that. Really, we should be taking it's like our number one priority. We only have one planet Earth and one home, and we should really be taking it seriously. And yet we haven't. And yet, look at what happens with Corona. Corona has literally flattened us on our asses for the past couple of months, and will probably carry on for a long time. But it takes big events to change us. Now, although we know global warming is a massive, massive problem, it's not the here and now. There seems to be this very poor mentality where people are, oh, it'll be in the future, we'll do something later on, it'll be better. And unfortunately, that's not the reality. The reality is we need to do something today. Now, one of the side benefits of Corona, if I can use that word, is the fact that we're not traveling as much and that emissions and oil have plummeted. So it's a brief respite for planet Earth, but we need to find long-term solutions for this. Yesterday was World Earth Day, and it came about in the early 70s, I think, the World Earth Day. And what was happening in the late 60s, early 70s was the fact that we were going into space. We were setting foot on the moon, and we took the picture of the planet Earth with no borders, with no color-coordinated nationalities. It was just one blue planet. And this is our home. And since that happened in the early 70s and moving on through that decade, we had environmental things set up, we've had the space agencies set up, and it's those big, big, sharp realizations as a society that promotes change. Now, we are all consciously aware that we need to be doing something about our planet, but something needs to happen. We need to have another shot in our system collectively as a planet, as a society, to really make that change. And I don't know what that is, and I don't think anyone really does, but we need to get a grip on things. So I think looking at the positives of this whole Corona thing, people will they will have time in their lives to consider what's important to them and think, well, maybe that job isn't the right thing for me. Maybe I need to create write that book or create that product to help society. And I think we will see a lot of people who are, teenagers, young people, being inspired by this whole situation to try and improve society. I really believe that. I think the next love leaders, shall we say, of tomorrow are being inspired by the events that are happening now.
Very, very true. Thank you for that. So one of the final questions I've got is about you personally, and who is there someone that you admire the most? Who do you admire the most?
I admire many people. I mean, parents for one, obviously. I've seen my parents do many, many things to help me over the years. But when I was a young wee lad, I used to be read, all the Greek mythology. I'm half Greek myself, half English, and I was really inspired by the tale of the heroes and all their heroic acts and all the lessons and all that, stuff. And I guess looking at a real life hero, is probably Alexander the Great, where he single-handedly, through pure force of character and nature and amazing leadership, he took his band of 40,000 odd soldiers into Persia, where he faced hundreds and hundreds of thousands of soldiers, and he defeated them through clever tactics, through bravery, and through the fact that he had no other choice. He burnt his boats as a clear message to his men that it's either success or nothing at all. And I think that's really important, because when you have no choice in life, human beings are very adaptable, and they find a solution quite quickly. Also, he led his men all the way through Persia, conquered Afghanistan, I think the only general to ever have achieved this, right up through to India. And I'm not necessarily advocating that conquering other people is something to be admired. What I'm looking at is more the fact that he was able to lead and inspire his men to travel all the way from Greece right up to India, which is a phenomenal achievement. He did all this by the age of 32. But more importantly, his military tactics, his leadership lessons are still being taught at Sandhurst and at American military academies today. They're still being studied and admired and copied. But he was probably one of the first generals ever to understand what hearts and minds meant, because he encouraged his men to merge and to intermarry between the different societies, to try and merge societies. So there was one society, Hellenistic at the time. Whether you agree with that or not is irrelevant. The point is that he was trying to fuse different societies. And I think as a species, and I think the internet has done a phenomenal job of breaking down borders and merging nationalities, because we're inspired by so many people across the world. I mean, someone in Australia could create an amazing video which makes everyone laugh, and then within a few days is propagated all the way around the world. And I think the internet's a very, very powerful tool. So I have many mentors, and have had many mentors over the years who have inspired me and helped me specifically with certain problems. But I guess Alexander the Great, he's been a real hero for me in the way that he's been a great example of very strong and passionate leadership.
Amazing. That's great. What a lovely story as well to end on. Kind of keep going, strive for what you think maybe is impossible, even if it leads you down a path where you actually are doing some of what you want, some of what you don't want. It's good to chat with you and get your view on.
The challenges we face today are corona, global warming, all these issues, pollution in our seas. So these are the things that our today's generation and tomorrow's generation really need to put their thinking caps on and inspire people. So we need a modern day Alexander the Great to help solve corona, global warming, and really push forward. Greta Thunberg, she's doing a phenomenal job, but she's only one person. We need a lot more people like her to really push through and make people aware of how important these issues are, not just for myself, but more importantly for the next generations.
Totally agree with that. Thank you, Angelos.
That's all right, my pleasure.
Questions for me before you go?
Cindy, I'd like to know, because I know you're in the healthcare industry. Perhaps you could share some stories of where you come across, some patients who are feeling really quite down, and how you're helping to inspire them with all that's going on with the corona issue at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky in healthcare. I've been working in care homes for quite a while, and I think the hardest thing for people in care homes, and us all, and care homes particularly, is some of the care homes that I'm working in, the people are at the end of their life. That's why they're in there. So to be on lockdown, to not be allowed any visitors in your final days, weeks, months of your life, you can imagine it's very, very challenging. And what we try and do, not just me, the whole team, I love the camaraderie that we have around overcoming obstacles, overcoming challenges. What we try and do is make the best out of a bad situation, so that we can still get that contact, so that we can still make sure that even though people are missing their visitors and their loved ones, that they still have that connection. And there are many, many, many examples of doing that. And, sadly, some people have died in the care home during this lockdown period. I was thinking about this the other day. I actually became a bit overwhelmed with emotion at one point last week where I had to make a decision about calling a family member for their relative that was going to die. And I had to make the call, which would give them their one visit. And it was such a big responsibility because I didn't want to call too soon, because it would mean that they would have their visit and then that would be that. And then I didn't want to leave it and call too late because they would have missed an opportunity. So it felt like a really big responsibility, and I always feel like that is a big responsibility. But there was this moment, I think because it's happened so frequently, there was this moment where I was just like, do I call now? Don't I call now? What do I do? Haven't I done the right thing? And actually, I woke up with this on my mind, and I made a call to the care home. The lady had passed away in the night, and I was just so pleased that I'd made the call, because it meant that this lady's lifelong partner of however many years was able to have that moment. They were able to have that moment together. So it's that was a very emotional thing. That's just one example of many, but it was something that really hit me quite hard in that moment where I was probably a bit tired, a bit overworked, but that kind of sense of it being so huge responsibility. So yeah. It's not just me. We're all making decisions like that every day, and let's just hope that it won't be too much longer before we can do the things that we've been doing before in terms of visiting and seeing people and having that contact. So
I think at the end of this, I think people are going to be very appreciative of human contact again.
Totally, yeah.
Hugging, kissing, shaking hands, touching elbows, all this kind of stuff. Everyone's going to be a lot more appreciative, and hopefully at the end of this, whenever the end is, I mean, it could be one of those viruses that just is endemic. I'm no expert by any means, but it just seems that it keeps adapting, and one cure may not cure the other 20 variations. So it may be something that is with us for a very long time. But I'm hoping at the end of this, or once we've adapted, or whatever happens, we all go out there and support our local businesses and really appreciate our families, and just being able to touch another human being again. It's the simple things in life that sometimes these things we've taken for granted for countless generations, and now we're really feeling it, and it's only been a couple of months. So I guess we've got to be stoic and resilient. We've just got to keep going, keep smiling, and just keep looking at the future where we have a cure or a plan where we can get out there and lead a normal life again.
True. Make the most of it, isn't it, eh?
Indeed.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been absolutely brilliant to have you on, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.
My pleasure, Cindy. Thank you for asking me on.
Thank you. Loads of love. Take care.
Yeah, see you later. Bye-bye.
You've listened to a podcast by the L.O.V.E Leadership Academy with Cindy Willcocks. Thank you for listening, and to learn more about the model of L.O.V.E leadership, search online for Draw a Heart Around It, a revolutionary mental health treatment for individuals and companies, written by Cindy Willcocks. Dream big and live your best life.